Welcome to the Facebook Live 39.6 show. Today is episode number 16 of the 39.6 broadcast. Today, we are going to do live question and answers for anybody who's here today with us. And to continue our discussion on taxes, I also have some questions today to discuss on taxes. So, Pinky, take it away.
Hey, let's get moving. Dancing, come on, and spin around with me. I love dancing, I love dancing. Dance now, come on.
All right. Today, we are going to continue our discussion on taxes. This is the show where we talk about how to make your money work for you so you don't have to work for your money. First, we are going to say hi to the people who are here. Welcome, Bantu, Kate, Amulia. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your attendance. Please, if you can hear me, give me the thumbs up just so I know that the audio is coming loud and clear. And please feel free to share this so other people can join. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the comments. And we are going to discuss questions as people post them if you want to. This is how I can actually get to people's questions because I can't get to everybody's questions for me. So we're going to do them here. I also have some new lighting. I think that this will work out a little bit better so you can see me because we usually broadcast these in the evening. It is around 8:30 over here. Central time, which means I guess on the West Coast 6:30 and then 9:30 on the East Coast. So, all right. So we are going to get started today. We've already done a couple talks on taxes. The first one we talked about payroll taxes, talked about Medicare and FICA. We discussed those in episode number 14. Medicare and Social Security, which are the FICA taxes. We talked about how Medicare is a progressive tax with two brackets. Social Security is a flat tax that caps out when you get to $128,000 of income. And then in episode number 15, we talked about progressive federal taxes. And I used an example with a 0% bracket, 10% bracket, then 25% bracket, and then the 50% bracket for everything above. And we discussed how your taxation goes up level by level, and the difference between marginal tax rate, which is the highest tax rate you pay, the last bucket, and the effective tax rate, which is the average tax you pay across all of the buckets. Okay, so today we are first going to discuss, this is a very good question from the Physicians on Fire Facebook group. I think it was also cross-posted somewhere else. Hello, friends. I have a question regarding Roth options. We live in California, and at my work, they are giving a 457 Roth option. Okay, our household income is $300,000 to $350,000 per year. Which would be a better option, a Roth 457 or a traditional 457? We do live in California and pay taxes at 10 to 11%. I have been debating it for a while and highly appreciate your advice. Thank you very much. So, question number one, we are going to put 457 B Roth versus traditional. Okay, so this is the first question. So a lot of physicians fall into this area of income if you're a specialist or if you're potentially a two-physician couple, primary care physician. So $300,000 to $350,000 income. The median specialist income, according to the 2018 Medscape survey, was $300,000, and it was $200,000 for people in primary care. Okay, so this is not an uncommon bracket or uncommon income level for somebody who is a specialist physician. Okay, now California is a very high cost of living state in general. It does vary based on where you are in California, but the state tax is non-discriminating with respect to what part of California you live in. If you live in California, you are subject to a very high tax rate. Now, I haven't actually looked at the California rates, but they have also a progressive tax rate, from my best understanding, that goes up, and it goes all the way up to around 10%. Okay, and so if you're a very high earner, you could be paying, for example, 10% state tax in addition to your federal tax of 37% if you're at the highest bracket. Okay, so you could be paying 37 plus, let's say this person says 10 to 11%, could be paying 11% state and 37% federal. That's 48%. Just on your state and federal tax. Okay, they could have some county taxes, city taxes. That's not including Medicare and Social Security, which we discussed before. Medicare caps off at 2.35%. So that between Medicare, state, and federal is already over 50%. Okay, that's a lot. And then if you're actually going to spend your money on anything and pay sales tax, then you're paying sales tax on top of this. So it's very easy to lose half your money at the end of the year when you're in your if you're in the top tax bracket. Okay, but this person's earning $300 to $350, and that is a very important cutoff, because a lot of people who are there have to face this decision, and you have to look at ultimately what your tax liability is. In 2018, most people in the country will be taking the standard deduction. Okay, so if you recall in the previous episode, I discussed that there's a 0% bucket. Well, that 0% bucket is basically all of the dollars that you have that are considered deductible. Okay, so when you earn income, it can either go in one of two spots. It can either go into a place that is tax deductible, or it can go into a bucket that is taxable. Okay, ideally, if you're at high income, you want to put as much money into the tax deductible pot as possible. Okay, now if you recall, I talked about your HSA or FSA. These special programs don't have to pay state or federal tax, but they're also deductible from your Social Security and Medicare. So those are great great vehicles to utilize if you have those options, because you get to have a deduction on all 4 levels. Okay, so that's like a 50% deduction for somebody at the max rate living in California. Okay, but beyond FSA and HSA, your medical premium from a W-2 job, so your medical insurance premium, your dental premium, your vision insurance, these are all pre-tax. And so that will help divert money away from the taxable bucket. Okay, if you're paying, for example, disability insurance from your paycheck as a paycheck withholding, then that money is also tax deductible if you take the pre-tax option. Okay, when you take a pre-tax option on something like disability, if you do get the benefit, if you become disabled, that money will be subject to taxation at that time, likely at a much lower bracket. Okay, but basically everything that goes into the tax deductible bucket will not be subject to taxes. Okay, that includes all of your pre-tax retirement accounts, your pre-tax 401k or 403b, as well as a pre-tax 457b if you have one. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is you have to figure out how much taxable income, or how much income you can put into the tax deductible bucket if you max everything out. Okay, so you take all of your insurance and all of your FSA, HSA money, okay, you put that in there and you take that off of your total income. So let's pretend this person's earning $350,000, okay? And let's pretend they have medical insurance premium of $1,000 a month, okay? So that's $12,000 for insurance, okay? And let's pretend they're maxing out an HSA, okay? And that's $6,900. So I'm gonna say $7,000 to an HSA, okay? So right there, that's $19,000. Now you can throw in, let's say, vision and dental, and that's another $1,000. Okay, so now that brings us to $20,000 of deductions right there. Okay, and then let's pretend you're also paying disability, that your company offers you disability from work, and let's pretend that's another $5,000 premium. Okay, so that brings us to $25,000 pre-tax. Okay, that's before we get to our retirement accounts. So we've already brought the income from 350 down to 325. Okay, now the standard deduction in 2018 is $24,000. Okay, but if you itemize your deductions, it could be higher. So you have to choose every year if you're itemizing or taking the standard deduction. For 2018, again, I said most people will be taking the standard deduction of $24,000. However, in California and in other states with state tax, your state tax is considered deductible, but only up to a maximum of $10,000. Okay, and that's in any state. Now, if you're paying property tax, so for example, if you're in a no tax state and you have high property tax, you are very easily paying more than $10,000. This is a big change for the 2018 tax year, that all state and local taxes, we call SALT, they cap off at $10,000. So people, if you live in California or New York, those people get penalized a lot. If you're earning $30,000 and you're getting taxed from the state at 10%, that's $30,000. When you do your federal tax return, you only get to keep $10,000 of that as being considered deductible. Okay. Now, so if you don't have any other deductions other than state tax, well, you would just take the standard deduction of $24,000 because it's much more than 10. Okay, but there are other deductions on Schedule A, such as mortgage interest, which is probably the number one, and then charitable contributions, which is probably number two for most people. Okay, now your mortgage interest deduction is the amount of interest you pay in a given year. Okay, if you bought a house in 2018, they'll only allow you to write off interest of the first $750,000 of mortgage principal. Okay, now, so if you have a $1 million house with $1 million mortgage and you bought it in 2018, you would only be able to deduct $750,000 of it. Oh, sorry, the interest of $750,000 of it. But if you bought your house in 2017 or prior to that, you would be able to deduct the mortgage interest on the first $1 million. Okay, so let's pretend you bought a house in 2017 for $1 million at 0 down with a physician's mortgage at 4%. Well, that would be a $40,000 mortgage interest deduction that you would be able to itemize on Schedule A. So you take that $40,000 and you add the $10,000 from your property tax, and that adds up to $50,000. So you would have a $50,000 we call itemized deductions. Okay. Now, if you took the standard deduction, it would just be $24,000. Okay, but just to see where we are before we get to our retirement accounts, we started at $350,000. We put $25,000 into our pre-tax medical, dental, vision, and HSA plan, and then we had $50,000 of itemized deductions. Okay, so that's $75,000 I can take off of the $350,000, which means it leaves me with $275,000. Okay, so now that's where I am before making the decision regarding the 401k or the 457 or the 403b. So if you look at the tax brackets, the big cutoff in this year for high earners is between the 24% and the 32% bracket. Okay, the 32% bracket starts at a taxable income of $315,000. This person, in this example, if they had a $50,000 itemized deductions and $25,000 of pre-tax deductions otherwise, you're already down to $275,000. So you're in the 24% bracket. Okay, you haven't hit the $315,000 mark. Okay, so if this person did everything Roth 401k, 403b, 457, it would all be at the 24% bracket. Okay, because remember, if you do Roth contributions, your tax bracket does not change at all. Okay, but let's change the situation. Let's pretend the person takes the standard deduction. Okay, so instead of having 50,000 to take off, they only take off 24,000. So in that situation, they have 25 pre-tax from their HSA and their insurance, and they have 25 and 24,000 as a standard deduction. They take $49,000 off the 350K, and you're at 301,000. So again, this person's at the 24% bracket, okay, without having to do anything pre-tax on the 401k. Now, to make it a little more complicated, let's pretend the person actually had an income of $375,000, okay, and took $25,000 off from the insurance and HSA and took the $24,000 standard deduction, okay. That person would then have a $326,000 tax liability. With $326,000, we have bumped over up into the 32% bracket, which starts at $315,000. Okay, so if you're at the 32% bracket, you're paying 32% federal plus the 10 or 11% state. That's 43%. Okay, it's very unlikely that a physician or actually anybody is going to be taking out money in retirement greater than 30% bracket. It's just very hard to do that. Okay, so you would need to have millions and millions of dollars in your pre-tax account, likely 5 million or more. Okay, so if you're nowhere near that, I would definitely do pre-tax at the 32% bracket. So what this person could do is, if their taxable income is 326,000 and the bracket cutoff is at 315, you want to take off $11,000 pre-tax, at least 11,000. So that $11,000, for example, the 457, 11,000 of it could be pre-tax, and then 7,500 could be Roth, because the limit is 18,500. Okay. The 401k, 403b, the person doesn't mention. Okay, that could also, for example, be Roth, but as long as in this example, $9,000 of it, $11,000 of it goes pre-tax, you don't have to pay anything at that 32% bracket. Now, if this person's already at peak earnings, not likely to go much higher, and this person's in California now with that high tax rate, for a lot of people in this situation, you're probably better off just doing pre-tax for every single possible thing you can and trying to save on that state tax and the federal tax, at least now while you're still poor. If your pre-tax bucket becomes very big, like $5 million or so, then I would highly consider start doing more Roth contributions at that point, because at that point, you're getting in trouble of withdrawing money up at a higher bracket. Okay, but if you're in California and you're paying 10% state tax, unless you're at a low income level now with an expectation to be up a lot higher, I would do pre-tax. So for example, let's pretend you're a resident and only earning $100,000 combined between you and a spouse, and you're down in the 12% or 10% bracket. Well, by all means, it might be reasonable to do Roth now and pay the federal and state tax when you're at that number. But if you're up in the 20% range federal and paying 10% state, I would take the tax deductions. Now, you can always retire in a different state, okay? And the rules with state taxes are so confusing. But if you can get away from paying the state tax later, then you can potentially avoid that. But state tax rules change all the time, and we don't know how it's gonna work 30 years from now versus now, when you deferred money at a state at one time and then retired at a different time in a different state. Okay, but a lot of people are in this position when they're in the $300,000 range. So these are the things you have to consider. What bracket you're actually going to be in, what state tax bracket you're paying now, what state tax bracket you're going to be paying when you're retired. And also, regarding 457Bs, a whole separate topic, but you have to first decide whether or not you even want to use your 457B. A governmental 457B is fantastic because they're unlikely to go under, but a private institution 457B is subject to the creditors if the company goes into financial duress, and your 457B could be at stake. So you want to know if you are investing in a 457B in a private institution, you definitely want to check out the bond rating of that institution to make sure they're financially secure. You also have to look at things like how you can withdraw the money when you leave, if they make you do a lump sum payout or spread it out over time, all sorts of things, okay? But assuming the person's going to use the 457B and you're making the choice of pre-tax versus Roth, that's the thought process you should go through. And if you are saving money pre-tax, that tax savings should be invested, okay? Assuming you are able to do Roth for the full $18,500 of that Roth 457B, if you decide to do pre-tax and save yourself around 40% or so, then you should be taking $7,000 and putting that into your taxable account. If you're not going to invest the tax savings, then by all means, put it into Roth because you'll be investing more effective money than otherwise. All right, so well, that's that question. We will take a break and say hi to other people here. Hello, Lynn, thank you for coming. And everybody else who's been here. Do I have any questions from the audience? All right. Feel free to say something. I'm going to look for next question on my queue.
Let's listen to your music. Start the tunes and I'll start to groove. I'm listening. When my tummy turns red, say something and I'll sing it back. Get ready.
All right. Pinky wants me to sing. All right, we are going to skip that and we are going to continue on. Okay, so I have a question somebody sent to me directly. It says, he said, I'm looking into starting a new job soon. My understanding is that the 401k has a vesting time before I can contribute. So if I start in 2018, I guess I would have to wait 1 year. I'd have to wait until 2020 to contribute to the 401k? Question mark. Could I still do personal contributions? Question mark. Group has it set up as we can self-match with our salary. Okay, so the question is, sorry, okay. Do I have to wait to contribute? All right, so on a 401k, every institution makes their own plan documents, okay? And they get to decide how the 401k works. So we have a vesting schedule with respect to how employer contributions are vested. But we also have kind of a wait time before we can even have the policy. So this is very common and it's really frustrating for people who want to get money invested soon. So for example, let's pretend you just finished residency and you didn't have much cash flow in residency or extra cash flow, and you didn't fill up your $18,500 into your 403B while you were there. You said, well, once I get my new job, I'll just fill in the $18,500 into that 403B or that 401k because there's only one limit for the entire year for 401k or 403B employee contributions. Okay. However, a lot of people start jobs and they have a wait period of 6 months or potentially even a year before you can even participate. So if you hadn't put in the $18,500 during residency in your last year before you graduated, and then you start a new job with a 6-month wait time, you're not going to be able to get anything in that year, at least not from an employer. You could do it if you were self-employed and had other income, but you're not going to get it from your new employer. A lot of companies do this. It's kind of annoying. I think that most companies should allow you to basically start immediately or at least within 1 month just to get everything set up. It is a paperwork issue that to actually get people enrolled and started on policies, especially in a company that's not very big. A a lot of times they want to make sure that you are going to stick around before they start giving you these benefits, because it actually does cost a company money to actually have a 401k open for each employee. Okay, the company that's providing that 401k charges them for every person that is in the account. So it does cost your company money, and often they make you wait 6 months to up to a year often I've seen. So unfortunately, from what it sounds like, you probably can't contribute even your own contributions to your 401k for a whole year, which means if you don't get it in, if you're leaving your job right now, I would definitely get it all in before you leave. Okay. And then next year, hopefully you can get 18,500 in before the year is out. Okay. Now at my employer, they had this policy where there's a 6-month wait period, but after that 6 month is over, you can't start until the beginning of another quarter. Okay. So let's pretend you started working in October. So you'd have to wait until April to get to your 6 month wait period, but they don't allow you to start until July, because April 1 it was January 1, April 1, July 1, and October 1 would be the start date. So if you started, let's say in November 1st, and you waited the 6 months to get to May 1, they would not allow you to contribute until July 1, because it has to be at the beginning of a quarter when they start to enroll people. They don't want to deal with it every month, I guess. It's kind of a nuisance, especially if you were to have started, let's say May 1st, and then November 1 comes in and you want to get your money in before the end of the year. Well, they say you have to wait until January 1st. Well, then it's too late for that year. So you miss out on an entire year of a contribution. And then the way our employer match worked, it was based on how many months your plan was open in that year. So for example, if you could have gotten everything in December, but they didn't let you start until January, you didn't get any match for that year just because they made you wait 1 more month. So that's the way a lot of policies are. And unfortunately, they can't make exceptions for one person, because that's the way the plan documents are written. They'd have to basically revise their entire plan documents. So those are things you need to know before you start a new job, when you're able to start contributing, and try to plan your time accordingly. Because if you need to get money in before a year's out, you don't necessarily want to start or leave a job at the wrong time where you miss an entire year of contributions. Regarding vesting of the employer contribution, a lot of places have a graduated match schedule. So for me, every 1 year anniversary of my start date, they increase the portion of the employer portion that is vested. So September 1 was my start date. So on my 1 year anniversary, 20% of anything the employer gave me was considered vested. And then the second anniversary, it was up to 40%, then 60%, then 80%. Then after the 5th year, on my 5th year anniversary, 100% of the employer portion will be vested, and it would be mine if I leave, and that would be able to be rolled over to an IRA or some other 401k policy. The employee contributions, or the deferrals from your own paycheck, are always 100% vested, no matter where you are. That's just an IRS rule. Okay. All right, I have a question sent to me directly. Okay, could you please talk briefly on how to choose a portfolio or a suggested portfolio for your Backdoor Roth? Okay, so now a Backdoor Roth, first of all, is 2 steps, a 2-step process. It is not an actual account. So your account is a Roth IRA. And the term Backdoor Roth, this refers to the process of getting your money into your Roth IRA if you are over the income limits. So if you're married and your adjusted gross income is like over $200,000, you exceed the amount that you can have as earnings that would permit you to put money directly into your Roth IRA. Okay, so I am going to get, okay, here's a cup. Okay, and I can't see myself right now. Okay, so here's a cup, and this is, we're gonna call this your traditional IRA. Okay, first of all, this is a traditional IRA. There is no income limitation on a traditional IRA. So anybody can put money into a traditional IRA, okay? Now this glass is going to be a Roth IRA. Now there's already something in it because when I had money before that I put into my Roth IRA, it's still there, okay? So my traditional IRA bucket is empty. Now my joint income for this year is over $200,000, okay? Sorry, I'm just thirsty. Okay, so $200,000 I have as gross income or adjusted gross income, so I can't contribute $5,500 directly into here, okay? I just can't do that. So I have to use a traditional IRA as a vehicle to do that, okay? So what I do is I simply put $5,500. So I'm gonna pour $5,500 from, oh, I need to change my label here. Okay, I'm gonna say Backdoor Roth IRA for people who are watching, and you can see the headline. Okay, all right, so here is my traditional IRA, and I am simply going to take 5,500 and I'm going to pour that in. Okay. Now, I have 5,500 in here, and I have a bunch of money in here from prior contributions and earnings. This traditional IRA, okay, when I file my taxes, I have to choose whether or not I'm going to take a deduction on this. Remember how I said like a 401k pre-tax or 403b or 457 pre-tax? That money does not count as taxable income. It doesn't even show up on your W-2 if you put money in there pre-tax, okay? But if you put money into traditional IRA, if your income is low enough, or like if your job doesn't offer you a retirement account and your income is low enough, you can choose to take a deduction on this, which means that you would be able to subtract 5,500 from your total income when calculating your taxable income. Okay, so that 5,500 will be considered deductible. But if you are over the limit for Roth IRA contributions, you definitely cannot take a deduction on this money. Okay, you cannot take the deduction. So the money goes into the IRA as what we call a non-deductible contribution, which means that it has a basis. If you put in 5,500 in here, and that 5,500 was after-tax money because it came from your own checking account. It went in here as after-tax dollars. It is still here as after-tax dollars because you have not taken a deduction on it. Now, this water here, this investment can grow. And the growth of this money is subject to taxation as ordinary income when you withdraw it or when you convert it to Roth, okay? So, but let's just pretend I didn't say that. Let's make this simpler. You put 5,500 in today. You do not take a deduction on it. The money clears tomorrow, okay? So then tomorrow, you decide to move your money from the traditional IRA into the Roth IRA. That process is called a Roth conversion, okay? I was not allowed to pour the water directly into the orange juice. That would have been a direct contribution. Not allowed to do that if your income is too high. But you are allowed to pour it into the traditional IRA, and you are allowed to move the money from the traditional IRA into the Roth IRA. Okay, so instead of doing it in one step, you're doing it in two steps. You do have to file a special form on this. Okay, you're going to file a form 8606 on your taxes. And that basically tells the IRS that, yes, this was a taxable event. Okay, whenever you go from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, it is taxable as an event. But the amount that is taxed at is dependent on how much of this money here was pre-tax money or was gains? Okay, well, none of it was pre-tax money. And if you roll it over the next day, there won't be any gains in it. So there's no taxation. It's basically taxed at a 0% bracket. So it is a taxable event that subjects you to zero tax. So now you have your money in here. Now the question, which I haven't even started to answer, is what portfolio or asset allocation would you recommend for the backdoor Roth or for the Roth IRA? Well, the question really is, what is the asset allocation for a Roth IRA? But then ultimately the question is, what is your asset allocation? Because if you go back to one of my earlier episodes, I talked about filling in your investment buckets. And you have, this might have been like episode 3, I don't know, it was one of my first ones. And basically, you have a whole bunch of buckets. You have a traditional IRA, you have a Roth IRA, okay, you may have, let's say this bucket here is an HSA, okay, you're gonna have your 401k bucket, your 403b bucket, 457 bucket, you're gonna have a solo 401k for your side hustle, and you're gonna have your taxable account, okay? Now, you only have one portfolio. All of your holdings combined is one portfolio. So what I do is I take, let's pretend I didn't have any real estate at all and I just had stocks and bonds, traditional securities. I would fill all of the small buckets with something that is a big portion of my portfolio. So if I had a basic 3-fund portfolio with like a total US stock market and total international bond market, total US stock, total international stock, and then total US bond. Okay, let's just pretend I wanted 50% of it to be US stock, 20% of it to be international stock, and 30% of it to be bond. Well, I would just fill up all of my small buckets with US stock, okay, because they're all small buckets. Then I would probably take a medium-sized bucket and fill that up with the international, okay? And then in whatever is the biggest bucket, I would just have basically all 3. Okay, and you just make your allocation so that the whole thing as a whole is what you want it to be. So you don't really need to have a different asset allocation for each individual account. That becomes tedious, complicated, and totally unnecessary. You're going to have something like a Roth IRA that has a small balance. You're going to have a 401k, which has a much bigger balance if you're just starting out with both of them. And then ultimately, hopefully, you have a taxable account that outweighs all of them. Okay. And then you could just do all of your balancing in your taxable account, or you could do all your balancing in your 401k. But really, you just think about the entire portfolio as one. You can just basically put one fund in each small account, and then in the big account, do your balancing there. So decide what your asset allocation is first. Look at the pieces you have, and then just fill them in. There's no need to have 2, 3, 4, 5 different holdings in each account. It just ends up becoming very complicated. All right. Let me see if I have any more. Okay, I think I have filled up all the questions. That has been about 40 minutes. Thank you for the people who are here. If you have any more questions, feel free to state one more, put it in the comment, or send it to me as a direct message. Otherwise, we are going to peace out on episode number 16. And let's see, do I have one more? All right. I think that is it. So thank you guys very much for coming. This episode is brought to you by Shinola Maria. Shinola Maria has her Instagram page. Please follow her. So she is at Shinola Maria. She is our 1-year-old who is sleeping, so I can do this talk now. Who do you work for? Well, I hope you work for yourself and your family, because, at the end of the day, if you're an employee for somebody else, they work for themselves. They hire you to help them out, but they want to get the most out of you that they can for the least amount of money. That's basically how it works when you're an employee, right? So if you ever leave your job, they're going to replace you, okay? Work for yourself, work for your family, put them all first. And so Shinola Maria, She's 12 months old and would love it if you followed her. So she's on Instagram and she is on Facebook. And that is it for today. Take it away, Pinky. Until episode number 17.
Hey,